The film begins by featuring four spies on a mission to capture a terrorist, but during the interrogation, the terrorist ends up speaking with the Angel of Death. Unfortunately, one of the agents dies while containing the explosion. Witnessing this, the spy leader named Harry is forced to halt the mission, feeling responsible for his colleague's death. He then visits the family's home and recounts everything that happened during the mission. As a final tribute, he gives a gold medal to a child named Eggsy, who is the only child of his deceased colleague. Behind the medal, there is a phone number that the family can call if they need assistance. 17 years later, a professor is kidnapped by a terrorist group who forces him to create a highly deadly biological weapon. Luckily, a special agent comes to rescue him after slaughtering all the terrorists. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and when the agent goes to check, a woman appears. She is a henchwoman of the terrorist whose legs are modified with deadly weapons. Later on, the terrorist leader named Valentine comes to fetch the professor. He plans to create the most deadly biological weapon in the world. Elsewhere, we are introduced to a spy organization known as Kingsman. This organization is tasked with maintaining world peace. In their headquarters, the agents are having an emergency meeting with the organization's leader. During the meeting, they discuss the death of their agent, who was killed by Valentine's henchmen. At the end of the discussion, the chairman requests that each agent bring a potential replacement candidate to replace the fallen agent. On the other hand, Eggsy has grown into an adult man, but he lives in poverty and is forced to drop out of school. Not only that, his mother remarries to an unemployed man. As a result, Eggsy prefers to play outside rather than stay at home. He then goes to a bar and tells his friends about his stepfather's behavior. Here it is revealed that his stepfather is a gangster boss. To make matters worse, the conversation is overheard by the gangsters in the bar. Suddenly, they feel offended because their boss is being insulted. Eggsy then takes his friends out and steals a car belonging to one of the gangsters. Not only do they steal it, but they also use it recklessly. Because of this incident, the police eventually arrest and detain Eggsy at the police station. He remembers the medal given by Harry, and without hesitation, he immediately contacts the number on the medal. As a result, he is released on the spot. It turns out, I couldn't be surprised anymore, because the person who saved him is Harry. Harry, as a secret agent, pretends to be an ordinary tailor who owes his life to his father. Then he takes him for a drink at the nearest coffee shop while telling him about his past. However, he is quite disappointed because Eggsy is not as skilled as his father and instead becomes a vagrant. In the midst of their conversation, the gangsters come to beat up Eggsy for stealing their car. Of course, Harry doesn't stand idly by and is forced to brutally retaliate. He does this as a gesture of gratitude, and before leaving he instructs Eggsy to meet him at a certain location. After returning from the coffee shop, Eggsy is suddenly attacked by his stepfather. He is then tortured to reveal the name of the person who beat up his henchmen. However, unknowingly, all of his actions have been recorded by Harry. It turns out that Harry has been bugging the house all this time. He then threatens to send Eggsy's stepfather to jail if he doesn't let go of Eggsy. After experiencing this incident, Eggsy decides to leave home and visit Harry's place. Seeing his arrival, Harry immediately enrolls him as a potential Kingsman agent, because he believes that this young man has the same potential as his deceased father. And of course, Eggsy considers it a joke, but in reality, Harry is very serious about recruiting him. He then takes him into the secret headquarters beneath the tailor shop. As they walk, Harry tells the history of the founding of Kingsman, which was formed to maintain world peace. Upon arrival at the main headquarters, Eggsy is introduced to all the potential Kingsman agents who will undergo selection. In addition to passing very difficult tests, they also have to compete with each other for one position in the Kingsman organization. Before the tests begin, Eggsy meets the candidates, including a girl named Roxy. As we know, in every gathering there will always be someone who acts tough and talks a lot, and that person is Charlie. Indeed, he immediately underestimates Eggsy for not attending a prestigious university. The story of the first test begins. While they are sleeping, the room suddenly fills with water. As the water continues to rise, the Kingsman candidates begin to struggle to breathe. Meanwhile, Eggsy relies on his instincts to get out of the room. Thanks to his ability, some candidates manage to pass the first test. Then, a special agent named Merlin explains that a Kingsman must be able to work together. And because they rely solely on Eggsy's abilities, one of the candidates ends up dead. At the same time, Harry is on a mission to capture the professor kidnapped by Valentine. Because reportedly he has been helping Valentine in creating the biological weapon, but during the professor's interrogation, suddenly, it turns out Valentine has implanted an explosive device in the professor's head so that he wouldn't divulge his secrets. Valentine also instructs his henchwoman to find out who the agent is trying to stop his plan. Furthermore, he begins to lobby government officials from various countries to cooperate with him. In fact, he has prepared hundreds of millions of his products to be distributed to civilians, so that the image of the officials looks good in the eyes of the people. However, the Swedish princess refuses to cooperate, which makes Valentine very angry. He then orders his henchwoman to take her to prison and kill all of the princess's guards. For the leaders willing to cooperate, Valentine will implant a chip behind their heads. On the other hand, the Kingsman candidate test resumes, and this time Merlin instructs everyone to choose a puppy to train and care for until it grows up. Indirectly, this test can train memory function, attention, and problem-solving skills. Unfortunately, Eggsy has no knowledge about dogs, so he randomly chooses and gets the most difficult dog to train. Long story short, the third test begins. In this test, the candidates are challenged to parachute from a plane with the rule that they must land at a predetermined point. After the bell rang, they immediately free fell. However, when everyone was already floating in the air, they got a surprise. Merlin said that one of the candidates didn't have a parachute, so no matter what, they had to work together to save him. Hearing that, everyone started to panic except Eggsy, who appeared calm. He then asked all the candidates to hold hands so they could safely reach the destination point. But unfortunately, there were still selfish people like Charlie who didn't want to help anyone because it turned out that the one without a parachute was Eggsy. Luckily, Roxy agreed to work with him. After the test finished, Merlin announced that only Charlie, Roxy, and Eggsy could continue the selection, while the others had to go home early, even though they passed with high scores. But Eggsy protested why only he didn't have a parachute. Merlin then called him forward and showed that all the candidates had parachutes, which meant he lied on this test intentionally so that the candidates could help each other. The next day, Eggsy visited Harry, who was being treated after failing to secure the professor. Shortly after, Merlin came to discuss the incident, which essentially Kingsman had tracked the chip behind the professor's head. And when investigated, they finally knew that Valentine was the mastermind behind all this. He had implanted chips in everyone who helped his project, including the professor. Not only that, Valentine also distributed SIM cards and internet for free to the entire population. But in reality, those SIM cards were biological weapons that could be controlled remotely. After learning what happened, Harry immediately went to Valentine's place. There he disguised himself as a billionaire who wanted to support his project. Samid then invited him to chat while eating. After the meal, they both finally agreed to work together. But it turned out Valentine secretly placed a tracker on Harry's body through the wine. Upon returning from there, Harry met with the head of Kingsman. But unfortunately, he couldn't get any important information or evidence at Valentine's place. It seems that Valentine was able to hide his evil intentions by pretending to be a successful entrepreneur. Meanwhile, all television channels broadcast news about the mysterious disappearance of famous people, and it turned out that the victims were the Swedish princess and everyone who disagreed with Valentine's project. On the other hand, the Kingsman candidate test resumed. This time, the candidates were tasked with approaching a woman in a nightclub. Although it sounds strange, the purpose of this mission is for them to be able to seduce the woman to gather as much information as possible. But it turns out this mission was just a trap created by Merlin. The three of them were then drugged with drinks mixed with CTM. Shortly after, they woke up tied up above a railroad track. Here their loyalty was tested to the fullest. Then a man approached Eggsy. This man then promised to save him if he would disclose secrets about Harry. But as a very loyal person, Eggsy would rather be crushed by the train than betray his friend. Suddenly, a train car came speeding, and they managed to pass this test along with Roxy, who was able to overcome the final challenge. Meanwhile, Charlie failed because his fear was greater than his loyalty. At the same time, Valentine began preparing his biological weapon, and the SIM cards he distributed for free would emit a signal that would cause the users to lose consciousness. Afterwards, they would become like zombies and kill each other. The next day, Harry was to continue his mission. But before that, he invited Eggsy to choose bulletproof suits at the Kingsman tailor shop. However, when they were about to try them on, the shopkeeper said that the fitting room was being used by another customer. Not wanting to wait long, Harry eventually took his student to see the weapons room. He then explained the functions of each weapon. He even showed sophisticated shoes that had been modified with knives at the tip. After explaining for quite some time, Harry took Eggsy back to the jazz room. Unexpectedly, the person using the changing room was Valentine and his henchwoman. Valentine then explained that he came just to choose a suit. Upon hearing that, Harry advised him to buy a hat from there to cover his baldness. And who would have thought he had placed a bug inside the hat? Long story short, there was only one stage left in the Kingsman candidate test. Therefore, the head of Kingsman descended directly to test the two remaining candidates. This time, Eggsy was tested to shoot the dog he had been caring for. But unfortunately, Eggsy couldn't bring himself to do it. After failing the test, Eggsy decided to hijack one of the Kingsman cars and go somewhere. On the other hand, Roxy dared to shoot her dog, and as a result, she successfully passed to become a Kingsman agent with the nickname Agent Lancelot. Upon hearing Eggsy's failure, Harry immediately called him and expressed his disappointment. He explained that the gun used in the final test was empty. In essence, the test was deliberately designed to assess how far a Kingsman would be willing to sacrifice, and Eggsy should have easily passed the test. During the conversation, Merlin provided information that Valentine would test his biological weapon at a church. Without hesitation, Harry visited the mentioned church. He wouldn't allow Valentine to slaughter people who were praying. But what he didn't realize was that Valentine had been monitoring his movements from CCTV. Valentine seized this opportunity to activate his biological weapon, and this is what happened. Apparently, everyone in the church turned into zombies because of the signal emitted from the free SIM cards distributed by Valentine. This also affected Harry, causing him to go berserk and indiscriminately slaughter everyone. After dispatching all the zombies, he regained his senses and immediately felt guilty. As he was about to return to headquarters, he was confronted by Valentine. It turns out Valentine deliberately leaked information about the church to kill Harry, so that he could try out the biological weapon and get a chance to kill him. He also explained that the signal emitted from the SIM card would cause people to lose their sanity and consciousness. After explaining, Valentine immediately pulled out a pistol and killed Harry on the spot. Seeing his mentor shot, Eggsy quickly returned to headquarters to meet the head of Kingsman. However, strangely, the head didn't seem sad at all because for Kingsman agents, sacrifice is part of the job. To honor Harry's sacrifice, he invited Eggsy to drink alcohol, but at the same time, the head's movements seemed suspicious. And indeed, there was a chip implanted behind his head. Seeing this when Eggsy switched his drink without the knowledge of the head of Kingsman, he was highly suspicious that the drink contained deadly poison. Then they toasted to remember Harry's death, and as we know, people tend to be more honest after drinking alcohol. Here, the head finally admitted that he had been working with Valentine. He said all this because he wanted to invite Eggsy to be on his side. However, without hesitation, Eggsy rejected his offer and chose to remain loyal to the truth. Not liking the rejection, the head of Kingsman immediately activated the poison in his drink, and because it had been switched, the poison eventually became a boomerang. Carefully, Eggsy removed the chip implanted behind the head of the head. He then recounted all the events to Merlin and Roxy. The three of them began to plan to thwart Valentine's actions. In this mission, Roxy would be tasked with destroying one of Valentine's satellites, while Eggsy would attack his headquarters. Meanwhile, Valentine gathered all the people who helped his project inside a highly secure base. He promised to protect them from the chaos that would soon ensue after his destruction project was completed. They would start a new world without the Kingsmen, but these people were unaware that the chips implanted in their bodies could explode at Valentine's will, and ultimately Valentine would become the ruler of the entire world. Eggsy prepared for his first mission. He and Merlin secretly entered Valentine's headquarters territory using the invitation belonging to the head of Kingsmen. They then divided the tasks, where Eggsy would enter the headquarters, while Merlin would give directions from inside the plane. On the other side, Roxy was flying using a hot air balloon to explode Valentine's satellite, and when she successfully directed her rocket, one of the balloons burst, which made her heart very chaotic. But fortunately, she didn't give up until she completed her task. Alongside this, Merlin instructed Eggsy to access all of Valentine's data. When the hacking process was underway, Merlin asked him to return as soon as possible, but when he was about to leave, he was confronted by Charlie, who was actually invited by Valentine. As a result, he was caught and eventually had to kill brutally before his time. Upon seeing Eggsy escape, Valentine immediately accelerated the destruction of the world. However, his system suddenly malfunctioned because his satellite had been destroyed by a rocket. On the plane, Merlin urged Eggsy to return to Valentine's headquarters. This time, they both had to finish him off quickly to prevent him from endangering humanity again, but before leaving, Merlin offered him some weapons, and the one chosen was an umbrella. Upon arriving at Valentine's headquarters, Eggsy had to face hundreds of Valentine's soldiers. Although he fought with all his might, he was eventually overwhelmed due to being outnumbered. In this dire situation, he came up with a brilliant idea. He then asked Merlin to hack and activate the explosive signal of Valentine's soldiers' chips. Without hesitation, Merlin immediately did it, and this is what happened. On the other hand, Valentine tried to restart his computer system by borrowing his colleague's satellite. Then he reactivated the destruction program, which would make everyone in the world kill each other. Amidst the chaos, Eggsy arrived and shot directly at Valentine. This made Valentine very frightened. Seeing the attack, Gazel finally intervened and would eliminate anyone obstructing Valentine. Without fear, Eggsy immediately confronted her right then and there. In a short time, he managed to kill Gazel with the scorpion venom in his shoe. After that, he removed her prosthetic leg and used it to kill Valentine. In the end, he successfully saved the world from destruction. At the end of the movie, we are shown Eggsy, who has officially become a Kingsman agent. He then visits his mother at a coffee shop. There his mother is surrounded by gangsters, but this time Eggsy will not run away and chooses to fight them all. This scene shows us that no matter how high Eggsy's job is, he still loves his mother and wants to free her from the clutches of his cruel stepfather. The lesson we can take from this movie is Eggsy's spirit of hard work and never giving up. He shows us all that a process will never betray the result, and thus the movie ends. Kingsman. The Golden Circle begins with Eggsy wanting to go out to buy food near headquarters, but he is intercepted by his old enemy named Charlie. Not only alone, he also brings a troop to retaliate because the spy agent almost killed him a year ago. As additional information, Charlie is a failed Kingsman agent candidate and is very jealous of Eggsy. Seeing the arrival of his enemy, he pretends to surrender. Then, when Charlie is off guard, he immediately turns the tables. Turns out, Charlie has turned into a cyborg with a robotic hand. As a result, Eggsy looks a bit overwhelmed. Besides wanting to kill Charlie, he also intends to steal all the Kingsman data. But of course, Eggsy won't let that happen. After knocking Charlie down, he leads Charlie's troops away from the city to avoid endangering civilians. To find a shortcut, he asks for help from Agent Merlin, who is one of his mentors. Then, in the middle of the journey, he harnesses all his abilities to slaughter the enemies. When they have defeated them, Merlin tells Eggsy to immediately hide by sinking his car into the lake because there are still many police around the lake. Whether he likes it or not, he has to go through the Mataram sewer hole. At the same time, Charlie's cyborg hand moves and steals all the Kingsman data in Eggsy's car. Long story short, Eggsy has dinner with his girlfriend named Tild, and it turns out she is a princess from the Kingdom of Sweden whom he once saved in the first Kingsman film. Here she has inherited her mentor's apartment and decides to live there with Tild. The next day, all the Kingsman agents in England held a meeting to discuss the events of last night, which essentially were that Charlie and his team are members of a criminal organization whose name is unknown, but they clearly have a gold circle logo. In addition, the attack last night aimed to eliminate all Kingsman agents because they had become obstacles to their business. On a remote island, specifically in the Land of Down area, we are shown a drug mafia named Poppy, and it turns out she is the leader of the organization and Charlie's boss. For decades, Poppy has built a secret organization called the Golden Circle, which is the largest drug business in the world. This time, Poppy is looking for a new member, and to test his loyalty, she orders him to put the bald man next to him into the meat grinder. Without hesitation, he immediately captures the man and follows Poppy's orders. After successfully passing the test, Poppy instructs him to go to the salon building. In that place, a robot is programmed to remove the man's fingerprints, then tattoo the golden circle on his body using hot gold. After being tattooed, he returns to meet Poppy. The woman then gives him a burger made from the bald man's meat, then forces him to devour the food as a sign that he has officially become her member. That evening, Eggsy dined with the royal family of Sweden. Apparently, Tild invited him to the palace so her boyfriend could get acquainted with her parents. As a respected family, the king tested his knowledge ranging from mathematics, economics, to history. Unexpectedly, Eggsy, who often watched educational channels after school, managed to answer them perfectly. However, behind his success, there was Roxy, the answer key maker who helped him from afar. She was his comrade before officially becoming a Kingsman agent. Unfortunately, in the midst of the event, a major tragedy occurred where all Kingsman residences were attacked by mysterious missiles. It turned out the attack was carried out by the Golden Circle. At Poppy and Charlie's headquarters, they seemed pleased to have successfully destroyed all Kingsman agents. In return, Poppy gave Charlie a new, very powerful robotic hand. Due to the recent attack, Eggsy and Merlin accused each other as they were the only ones left. However, instead of fighting without clarity, they decided to work together and execute the emergency protocol, which was only done in dire circumstances like this one. Long story short, they visited the only remaining Kingsman location to find clues. But strangely, they only found a bottle of alcohol labeled The Statesman. Finally, these two agents chose to get drunk and resign to their situation. However, while drunk, they actually found a clue on the bottle, through the inscription Kentucky, one of the states in the United States. Seeing that, they immediately rushed to a beverage factory, hoping to find another clue. And indeed, Merlin detected a hidden underground headquarters, similar to that of the Kingsmen. But in the midst of their search, a cowboy suddenly attacked them. Unfortunately, the cowboy was too strong, so eventually they were both captured for looking suspicious. The cowboy began interrogating them. It turned out this person was a secret agent from an organization called Statesman. Not long after, a female agent arrived and explained that Kingsman was a sister organization to Statesman. After hearing her explanation, Eggsy and Merlin were released. Additionally, the Statesman agents had also found a Kingsman member who was almost killed a year ago. Turns out the person they meant was Harry. Without wasting time, they both immediately approached him. However, Harry had temporary amnesia, which saddened Eggsy because Harry was his best mentor. So, here's the story. After being shot by a terrorist leader, Harry fell into a coma and suffered amnesia. Then, the Statesman agents triggered his memory with butterfly images, hoping they would help restore his memory, so Eggsy and Merlin wouldn't be confused. A woman explained the incident when the member saved Harry. At the same time, Poppy was seen holding a legendary singer Elton John hostage. He was kidnapped and forced to entertain Poppy with his songs. However, not long after, a blue rash appeared all over his body. Apparently, he had consumed Poppy's drugs, even though the mafia boss had strictly forbidden Elton and other members from touching the drugs. Because the drug she created was a biological weapon to exterminate all addicts worldwide. On the other hand, Eggsy was brought into the main headquarters of Statesman. There, the chairman of Statesman explained about their organization, much like Kingsman. They were also a spy agency aimed at eradicating crime in the world. However, they also had a business in the alcohol beverage industry. Afterward, Eggsy explained his plan to find Charlie. His plan was to place a tracker on Charlie's lover so they could monitor his movements. Upon hearing this, the chairman of Statesman agreed. He then instructed the cowboy to accompany Eggsy. However, strangely, there were rashes on the cowboy's face similar to what Elton experienced. Therefore, the chairman sent his best agent, commonly known as Whiskey. Before embarking on this mission, Eggsy decided to visit his girlfriend first. Here, Tild gave him a gift of a dog, so his lover wouldn't be lonely while on duty. Then, Eggsy and Whiskey went to a music concert because according to the information they obtained, Clara was a music fan, so she would definitely come to the concert. And indeed, the woman they were looking for was at this place. In order to place the tracker, both of them had to get close to her. Then, after Whiskey failed to charm her, Eggsy started to take action. When he successfully charmed her, Eggsy photographed some suspicious individuals and sent them to Merlin. It turned out that all the people in the photos had the same condition as the cowboy, and according to other Statesman members, the cowboy liked to consume drugs. Then, afterward, a female Statesman agent explained important things about Harry's recovery. Essentially, if they wanted to restore all his memories, then he had to get something related to his past, so his memory could come back, for example, by drowning Harry because before becoming an agent, he had undergone a survival test in the water. On the other hand, Poppy was conversing with Charlie, stating that her business had grown very large, but she was still not famous. Therefore, Poppy created a biological weapon to gain worldwide recognition. After talking with Charlie, Poppy summoned her new member who was suspected of stealing the new type of drugs, and because of violating the rules, Poppy deployed her robotic dog to eliminate the member. That night, Eggsy asked Tild for permission to pretend to approach Clara to carry out his mission. Although not permitted, he had to do it to find Charlie's location. Without further delay, he took Clara to a hotel. Then he discreetly inserted a tracker into Clara's body. The next day, Eggsy returned to headquarters to meet Harry. Here, he wanted to awaken his memories by bringing a puppy. Then he intentionally pointed his gun at the puppy to trigger Harry's past memories. Unexpectedly, this method successfully restored all of Harry's memories, including memories of when he was selected to become a Kingsman agent. To celebrate Harry's recovery, they immediately drank at the Statesman's bar. However, amidst their joy, a gangster disturbed them. Not staying idle, Harry took action and taught them a lesson. Unfortunately, Harry's luck hadn't fully returned, so Agent Whiskey took over the fight. Shortly after, Poppy conducted a global live broadcast. In this live event, she explained about the blue rash symptoms suffered by many people, including the cowboy. Essentially, the rash was a side effect of the drugs. She also revealed that this was just the initial stage where the victims would lose consciousness. Then they would dance incessantly like party-crazed teenagers, and in the final stage, they would become paralyzed until death. However, Poppy offered an antidote as the only way out. She did all of this to threaten the government to comply with her demands. Firstly, legalize drug trafficking so she could sell them freely, including to children. Secondly, her organization must be immune to the law like government officials. Because of Poppy's threat, the whole world panicked, leading to chaos everywhere. Furthermore, hospitals were overwhelmed with Poppy's victims, making the doctors overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the President of America refused to respond to Poppy's messages. Instead, he wanted all the victims to die because it was their own fault. Then he would blame Poppy, and people would stop using drugs. So indirectly, Poppy had facilitated the president's agenda. On the other hand, Clara also got the blue rash, which of course made Charlie very worried. Charlie suggested that Clara go to Italy because Poppy had a laboratory there that produced the antidote. Here, Charlie was unaware that his conversation had been intercepted by Eggsy and his friends. Without hesitation, they immediately headed to the location mentioned by Charlie. There, Charlie was seen giving the antidote to Clara. Meanwhile, the agents had just arrived there. They then divided their tasks, with Harry overseeing the control room, while Eggsy and Whiskey would retrieve samples of the antidote. Long story short, they managed to enter the laboratory. Eggsy then deceived one of the workers by claiming he was an employee from Singapore. Since this mission was only to retrieve the antidote sample, Eggsy and Whiskey hurriedly took it and fled on a cable car. As a result, Charlie, who saw it, hacked the cable car route and caused it to go haywire. Luckily, Whiskey had a weapon that could penetrate glass. They then hid in a hut while waiting for Harry. However, his presence was followed by Poppy's henchmen. Whiskey pushed Eggsy to avoid getting shot. Unfortunately, the antidote sample fell and shattered. Eggsy was actually very angry at Whiskey, but since they were surrounded, they chose to fight to the end. Not long after, Poppy sent reinforcements to eliminate the 3 agents. They then tried to find a way out. Then, amidst the siege, Harry suddenly pointed his gun at Whiskey. Harry had suspected Whiskey since he pushed Eggsy, causing the antidote to break. Afterward, he immediately eliminated the enemies with a bomb made of perfume. When the situation was safe, Eggsy appeared angry at Harry for killing his own colleague, even though there was no clear evidence that Whiskey had betrayed them. Before continuing his mission, Eggsy put an oxygen mask on Whiskey's face in the hope that he could breathe again. On the other hand, the president imprisoned millions of drug victims in a stadium, including his personal secretary. According to him, all drug users deserve to die because they have violated the country's rules. Meanwhile, Eggsy and Harry returned to the Statesman headquarters to report what really happened. Without remorse, Harry admitted that he had killed Whiskey and suspected him of being a double agent. Hearing this, Merlin conducted several tests to ensure whether Harry had truly recovered. Perhaps his spy instincts hadn't returned to what they used to be. Not far from them, Eggsy received a video call from Tilde, but he was shocked because Tilde had become a victim of drug use and now had to suffer the effects of the illegal drug. Eggsy decided to finish his mission immediately. At the same time, Agent Whiskey managed to survive death, but like Harry, he woke up with temporary amnesia, and to restore his memory, Whiskey's colleague showed him a photo of his deceased ex-girlfriend. As a result, he immediately remembered everything that had happened, and without wasting any time, he rushed to seek revenge on Harry. On the other hand, Merlin had successfully tracked down the Golden Circle headquarters in the Land of Down area. This time, Merlin was no longer working remotely as support, but participated in the attack as a fighter. Long story short, the Kingsman agents finally arrived at the Golden Circle headquarters. However, unfortunately, Eggsy accidentally stepped on a landmine. Seeing this, Merlin immediately froze the landmine and instructed Eggsy to continue the mission, while he would replace Eggsy to step on the landmine before it exploded, or in other words, Merlin wanted to sacrifice himself for the team's safety. Additionally, he also wanted to repay the favor to Eggsy's father, who had helped him 18 years ago. Then Merlin instructed his 2 colleagues to go to Poppy's headquarters. Although reluctant, the mission had to be completed to avenge the deaths of the Kingsman agents. Then, while singing his favorite song, Merlin lured the enemy forces closer, and this is what happened. Afterward, Eggsy and Harry immediately attacked the Golden Circle headquarters, and would not let Merlin's sacrifice go in vain. Fearlessly, they stormed the headquarters. It didn't take long for them to defeat the enemies. Apparently, a world-class mafia couldn't hire more powerful mercenaries. Seeing what was happening, Poppy instructed Charlie to secure a briefcase. It turned out that the briefcase contained a system to distribute the antidote worldwide. Therefore, Poppy wouldn't let that object fall into the hands of the Kingsman agents. Without wasting time, Eggsy immediately chased after Charlie, while Harry fought with Poppy's robotic dog. Feeling outnumbered, Harry ran while thinking of a way to defeat Poppy's robotic dog. Unexpectedly, the robotic dog was able to corner him. Luckily, Elton came to rescue Harry, and it turned out that the robot was programmed not to attack Elton because Elton was Poppy's idol. As a result, Harry managed to destroy the robotic dog. At the same time, Eggsy was chasing Charlie, but instead of running away, Charlie turned around and challenged Eggsy because Charlie had a cyborg hand. Eggsy chose to flee and took Poppy's briefcase. Charlie, eager for revenge, unleashed all his anger. But unexpectedly, Eggsy managed to turn the tables. After defeating Charlie and the other enemies, Eggsy and Harry immediately took the briefcase belonging to Poppy. Unfortunately, Poppy deployed another robotic dog to chase Eggsy and Harry, and reluctantly, Harry had to fight the robotic dog again. Elsewhere, Charlie challenged Eggsy to a fight, and to make it fair, Eggsy decided to fight with one hand since Charlie was already handicapped. With the death of the robotic dog and Charlie, there was no one left guarding Poppy. This time, she couldn't escape anywhere, but instead of surrendering, Poppy deliberately engaged in small talk to stall for time so Eggsy could inject drugs directly into Poppy's body, and ultimately, the drugs became her downfall. Before Poppy died, she gave access codes to open her briefcase. When they were about to complete their mission, Whiskey came to stop Eggsy and Harry. He then prevented the distribution of the antidote and threatened to kill Eggsy and Harry. Apparently, he held a grudge against drug addicts because when he was still in high school, Whiskey's girlfriend was killed by 2 drug addicts, even though she was pregnant with Whiskey's first child. So, no matter what happened, he wanted to slaughter drug addicts with Poppy's drugs. Although sympathetic as Kingsman agents, Eggsy chose to stop him. Eventually, a fight ensued. After dispatching Whiskey, Eggsy and Harry immediately distributed the drug antidote, and once again, the Kingsman agents were able to save the world. The next day, the president's secretary held a press conference. She then revealed the president's initial intention to slaughter innocent people. As a result, the president was arrested. On the other hand, the head of the statesman rewarded the Kingsman agents. Essentially, he would help Eggsy and Harry rebuild the Kingsman organization, and to get funding for construction, they would receive shares in the statesman's alcohol business. At the end of the film, Eggsy finally married Tilde and would soon become a prince. But since his father was no longer alive, Harry agreed to be his wedding guardian.